Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first presentation of the day, which will be done by Lufthansa Consulting on the theme, The Future of Airline Business Models for Africa Post-COVID. It's my pleasure to invite our first speaker, Mr. Mathias Kern, Associate Partner, Lufthansa Consulting, who will make this presentation. Mathias Kern has worked in the consulting business for over 10 years, specializing in reorganization, transformation, and strategy. Prior to joining Lufthansa Consulting, Mathias worked for the Boston Consulting Group across different industries and global clients. At Lufthansa Consulting, Mathias heads the Solution Group organization and strategy, advising clients on restructuring, transformation, and startup of airlines. After this presentation, if time permits, we shall take some questions from the floor. Please use the Q&A tab for the questions. I now hand over to Mathias to make the presentation. Mathias, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning into our session on the future of airline business models for Africa post-COVID. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and skip this one as well, so we can go to the first. Yeah, thank you very much. So just to give you some background on Lufthansa Consulting, we have over 40 years of experience in aviation consulting, having done thousands of projects for airlines and airports all over the world. As an independent subsidiary of the Lufthansa Group, we are an advisor to both the Lufthansa Group as well as external clients with a market reach all over the world. And I'm sure you know my colleague Katrin Draver, who heads our African market and who asked me to share our thoughts on the market with you today. And with me today, I also have my colleague Arvind Shwanaseka, who heads our network and fleet team and who is available in the chat and happy to answer your questions as well. So thanks for that. And can we go to the next slide, please? So let's get started. How do we view the African market? So the African market we see as a market of opportunity. It's a fast-growing market. You have a large and young workforce that can drive economic growth. And Africa is actually an interesting case for digital innovation because the continent has pretty much skipped the fixed line telco age and jumped right into mobile. So there's a big affinity to adopt new digital solutions such as micro money platforms. And this is coupled with an entrepreneurial spirit that allows for smart solutions being developed. What makes the African market special is that the industry is intertwined with the local economy. So the tourism industry heavily depends on airlines as major transport infrastructure. Hence, the majority of African airlines are publicly owned. The market also, however, does pose a set of unique challenges. You have market access limitations. In some parts, we see high user development fees charged by governments. You have high fuel costs as the majority of countries are landlocked and need to transport fuel on poor roads. And you have high financing and leasing costs, which are due to the lesser's risk perception. And also the average fleet size is considerably higher, resulting in higher maintenance costs. So to succeed in the African market, you really need to be a master of survival. And that will be a trait that will determine who can also overcome this crisis. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So what can we expect in the future? In line with what we've seen globally, African airlines were hit hard by the pandemic with capacity dropping to 20% or less of 2019 levels. African airlines are all planning to produce at lower levels than 2019, still by the end of 2021, with most planning to operate below 80% levels. And looking globally, with vaccines being administered in global markets, and this being a key driver for recovery, we are just now entering the phase of recovery. And the challenge here for Africa is that less than 2% of the continent's population has actually been vaccinated at least once. For comparison, in Europe, it's 30 to 40%, and in the US, it's already at 50%. So Africa may not reach herd immunity levels until sometime in 2023. And this results in a paradox. While globally, domestic markets are recovering much faster than international markets, it's actually the other way around in Africa. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the question really is, should you and are you able to use this crisis as an opportunity to transform your business model? And to answer that, airline managers need to take an investor's perspective on their own enterprise and evaluate two dimensions. First of all, how future ready is the business model? Was it working before COVID-19 hit? And will it work in the post-COVID environment and in an environment that looks much differently? And the second question is, how well equipped are you with regard to crisis financing? And the task here is to correctly forecast how much cash do you need in the coming months, considering the implementation of your balance sheet optimization and cash saving measures. And this will also require you to have a reasonable traffic demand forecast that is specific to your network. Answering these two questions will help you to determine the needed course for action. So, in what kind of quadrant are you working on, and what kind of transformation program do you need to implement? But the question then is, how exactly do you become a master of survival? And if we can go to the next slide. The oversimplified answer to this is have the most effective and efficient business model to fulfill your strategic purpose or mission. And generally, we expect that there will be room for all types of business models in Africa in the future. We will see full service carriers, hybrid, low cost, and ultra low cost. So when defining your new business model, one needs to consider how the new normal will shape up to be. And we expect three major changes, which is business travel will remain on lower levels as digital collaboration becomes the new normal. We expect health and environmental aspects to become much more important to those who travel. And we expect that the financial burden that comes with the debts accumulated over the past year and in the coming months will stay with the industry for quite some time. That also implies that new players could be forming soon, taking advantage of this current market environment, meaning they can take advantage of opportunistic times to purchase aircraft right now. They can use voids left in the markets by airlines going bust, and they can bank on the fact that they don't carry legacy costs and are able to shape the organization towards the flexibility and resilience that is required in this chaotic market environment that we are expecting in the coming months. So some airlines will need to fundamentally change this business model altogether, and some have already done that. Take Airlink, for example, in Africa. They saw a vacuum in the market that was created by the continued difficulties of a national carrier, and that allowed them to step away from their franchise partnership with SAA, launch independent operations under their own code, and build new interline partnerships and set itself up for growth. So when thinking about your future business model, you need answers to what is your mission? Are we optimizing profits, or are we optimizing towards a different purpose, which is often the case for publicly owned enterprises? And then based on that mission, you will need to define who are our customers and what geography and what is the best fleet to reach them. And here is where many national carriers in Africa need to take a deep look into the mirror. What is your concrete strategic purpose? Are you adding economic value by servicing international routes that increase the complexity of your operations and severely hamper your financial flexibility? Or wouldn't it be much better to be a focused regional player with a homogeneous fleet of small and efficient aircraft and partnerships in place that allow for global connectivity? Besides that, all airlines are well advised to identify cargo opportunities as well. And if you look at the African markets, you can see Ethiopian has shown how you can quickly create a new business model as they have turned passenger aircraft into freighters. And Kenyan Airways just became the first airline to modify a 787 passenger aircraft to a freighter. In general, hub and spoke carriers in Africa will need to evaluate point-to-point opportunities during the time of, especially in the upcoming time of market recovery, and rethink their whole bank setup. And one thing is true no matter what, and no matter what strategic purpose you have, what scope you have defined for yourself, you will need to define the most efficient organizational setup to achieve that purpose in the future market environment. And here we would like to see real low-cost business models to form in Africa. At the moment, LCC in Africa appears to be a synonym for low fares, but not the lean, efficient cost base that is the driver behind what makes an LCC successful in other markets. So next slide, please. So to sum it up, what can we advise with regard to shaping your business models towards effectively and efficiently fulfilling the airline's mission and becoming a master of survival? Well, first of all, be flexible. Set up your organization along efficient processes with the flexibility and agility to ramp up and down production fast and cost efficiently, and be able to take opportunistic decisions faster than ever before. Take the Ethiopian and Kenyan Airways example and how they reacted to the cargo opportunity. And the second point is be lean. Even in the biggest crisis in the aviation sector, besides Air Zimbabwe, we have hardly seen any job cuts in Africa. And with lower expected margins and lower production levels, it's paramount to be as efficient as possible in all aspects of the organizations. And let me point out, airlines should not be a tool for social welfare. There are other public institutions that can fulfill that purpose much better. The third point we would like to make is be smart. Decisions and steering need to be based on intelligently connected data systems. And to those claiming that you don't need to invest in digitization as much in Africa as with Western carriers due to cheaper labor costs, let me point out, it's not about reducing manpower through digitization. It's about smart steering. On the revenue side, how do you effectively predict and then match a customer's willingness to pay at any moment in time? And on the operational side is the question, how can you get more out of your assets? For example, by predicting maintenance events or by optimizing the utilization of your most expensive assets, your aircraft. Fourthly, we'd like to point out, be sustainable. You will need to have a credible story for your stakeholders, be it investors, governments, as well as customers, regarding your commitment to sustainability. And then, especially for the African market, we want to stress, be collaborative. You need to have the right network of partners that goes beyond just having co-chairs in place. African aviation will be stronger if it stands together and works together. And the question is, why not team up and partner for example, MRO services? Take Kenyan and Kenyan Airways and Congo Airways and their strategic cooperation MOU they just signed, covering technical and commercial cooperation. Furthermore, why are African airlines continuing to get fleeced by OEMs in deals for aircraft that don't really fit their purpose? Why not get help with getting the right network plan to identify your specific fleet needs and then teaming up with other airlines with the same needs to increase your leverage and engage experienced negotiators to get the best deal for everyone involved? And last but not least, shape the market. For example, Africa has little to no real low-cost traffic, which is partly due to protectionism. And that is not viable in the long term and hurts the industry as a whole. And there's a huge opportunity right now to accelerate liberalization. Finally, implementing the single African skies should be a priority, not only for the broader goal of connectivity, but also for financial strength. And next slide, please. So when having defined the future business model and the transformation path to get there, the next order of business is securing the financing required to get there. And in case your strategic purpose is to provide connectivity to your home country, it helps to be able to convince stakeholders of your contribution to the economy. And to do that, you will need to take into account 4 dimensions. First of all, the direct impacts due to the operations of the airline. Second, the indirect impact, so the spend on the supplier's value chain. Thirdly, the induced impact, so coming from the expenditures of those employees, increasing the purchasing power in the region. And fourthly, and the biggest one, the catalytic impact, so the wider economic benefits due to the facilitation of trade, investments, but also air connectivity. For example, the tourism impact you have by enabling tourist expenditure with the visitors being brought in. Let me give you an example. We just celebrated Mother's Day in Europe. And what's the largest source of flowers for the occasion, especially roses? Kenya. And that kind of trade flow would be impossible without air connectivity. So these impacts can be measured, estimated, and forecasted, for which Lufthansa Consulting has developed a methodology and tool. And if you go to the next page, we just want to briefly highlight what that can mean. So we looked at a small airline with 20 aircraft and less than 400 million in total revenue. And we saw that the impact that was created by 10,000 direct jobs, 40,000 jobs due to air connectivity, and 130,000 jobs in the wider tourism industry. The impact of the airline was 10 times higher than what was asked to rescue the airline. This factor won't be that high for all other airlines, but you can be sure it will be a strong multiplier and a convincing argument in the discussion with public investors. So while it holds true that, as Richard Branson said, the safest way to become a millionaire is to start with $1 billion and launch an airline, the impact of airlines from a macroeconomic perspective is much higher than just the P&L statement. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So in summary, what are we telling you? What do you need to do to become a master of survival? Well, first of all, you need to evaluate the future readiness of your business model. Then you need to define who you want to be, depending on your strategic purpose and your need to define the ideal future business model. Thirdly, based on your specific market forecast, your new business model, you will need to forecast your production level and derive your required financing needs going forward. And as a last step, in case you are trying to convince a public investor, you need to be able to estimate the impact of your new business model on the economy as a whole. And if you've done all that, you will be able to tell a compelling story to any investor, showing them from the investor's perspective, what do you need from them and what are they getting for it? And this is how airlines in Africa should think about their business models and how to emerge as a master of survival. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and me and Arvind are happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mathias, and very insightful presentation from the perspective of Lufthansa Consulting on how to look at the future of airline business models for Africa post-COVID. What does this look like? Some very good propositions on what airlines need to do. They need to be flexible, they need to be lean, they need to be smart, need to look at sustainability, they need to look at cooperation, and we need to shape the market together. We did not receive questions from the floor, so we'll be sharing the presentation with the participants post-event. And those of you who will wish to get in touch with Lufthansa Consulting team, we invite you to do so through the attendee hub and also through the secretariat. Thank you very much for this presentation. The next session is starting shortly, and we look forward to meet you at the next session. Please go to the attendee hub, click on the event tab, click on the next session, which is the second panel of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.